This meeting is being recorded.
Thanks. All right. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. My name is Gilbert Rogers. I am a financial counselor with HJW, and today I am here to share more info or just a few tips about salary negotiations. So let me go ahead and pull up my presentation real quick. And then we will get going. Share. All right, can you hear me? You hear me okay, right, Miss Joyce? Okay, I was just double checking.
Yes, I can hear you.
Start this from the beginning. All right, so again, welcome. I'm happy that you all have decided to join us today. I'm presenting for HJW, and I'm presenting on securing the bag. Unfortunately, I'm having issues with my computer, but hopefully I can get these coordinated and work through these. So hopefully my screen is sharing okay. And anyhow, today, as I mentioned, we're going to talk about securing the bag. My hope is that I leave you all with a few tips on how to appropriately address salary negotiations. And that's essentially, it's a topic where a lot of individuals may not understand those fundamental skills and how to navigate an offer that's either too low or something that they feel is inadequate. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get moving with the presentation. So a little bit about me. As I mentioned, I'm a financial educator with HJW, and I've been doing financial education for a while in various capacities. But the big thing that I want is to empower individuals who may not have had access to financial education in the past. So being a part of HJW allows me to kind of fulfill that want to help others and do so in an educational format or setting. So here's a little bit about me. I won't go through my background too much. Hopefully this isn't the first time that you have tuned in to listen, but just know that I'm passionate about this sort of education and what we provide through HJW. All right, so I always like to put things into context. Just a few statistics as it relates to the wage gap. Um, and you see on the slide there, a study conducted in 2021 where they talked about how women earn just 83.1% of what men earn typically. And that study was conducted by IWPR, and they assessed weekly earnings for full-time workers. Also, compared to median weekly earnings of white men, Hispanics typically earn about 58.4% on the dollar. Black women 63.1%, and white women about 79.6%. Now, in other words, basically saying that there's a wage gap, and one way to kind of address that gap is to educate individuals on how to negotiate. There are a ton of other factors that are beyond your control or beyond our control that hopefully we can keep moving the needle on. But one way is to learn how to put your best foot forward when it comes to a salary negotiation. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. So what happens? So I get a salary, I get a job offer at a job that I may, you know, it may be a dream job, but what you have to think about is what's your next step after receiving a job offer? Is it to accept whatever the offer is? Maybe you're happy with it, so maybe you want to accept the offer. The second option is to either reject the offer. So you can accept or you can reject. And once you accept or reject, there's also another layer to it. You can accept a job with regrets and be in a position where you feel as though you should have earned more money or feel that you're undercompensated. You can also reject an offer and feel that maybe you should not have rejected it because it's a field that you really want to work in, but the salary just wasn't right. And in any of these situations, well, mainly the last two, uh, you kind of have a bad feeling about the job, especially if you really wanted it, and if you accept it, and then the money is not where you feel as though it should be. So the last thing that we have there is that you can negotiate. So you neither accept or reject. You just decide. Excuse me. You decide to negotiate, meaning asking for more money and seeing what can be done to increase your compensation. So these are your options. All right. So before getting to that point and knowing what to do during the negotiation process, there's a couple of things you can do as far as pre-work, where you can go through and determine what offer is reasonable based upon your knowledge, skills, abilities, experiences, and qualifications. And the way that you go about doing that is you learn what the market typically pays for a position. And by doing that, you better understand what the market value is for a role at a different company, or maybe even the same type of role in a different area. And that's one way to go about it. So the ultimate question is that you have to answer is, what is the position worth to the company? Because that will dictate more often than not how much they will pay for a specific role. And one thing to do to avoid taking it personal is you have to look at it from a company standpoint, and maybe what their goals, what their objectives are, and whether or not it seems like you are being lowballed, or you feeling like that the offer is just not what they should be paying. But in turn, you have to realize or understand what the value of a position is to a company, and also what value you bring to that position with that company. Now, when it comes to market value, there are four different things that you look at. One is the title of the position. That can determine how much an individual is paid. Number two, seniority. Someone in a role for a period of time longer than someone else who's brand new to a role, um, they'll make more money if you've been in a senior position, or if you've been in that position for a while, typically. Number three, the industry. Different industries will pay different amounts of money depending on what the field is. And it may be a tech industry, or it may be, it could be a retail position. A data analyst in a retail position may make a different amount than a data analyst in a tech position. I mean, two different industries. So the demands of different titles or different roles are different. And then the last one there is geography. Geography also ties into it. The rate of pay or the cost of living that must be assessed and analyzed coming from one part of the country to another, that will entail different pay levels. So all of these factors must be taken into consideration as you think about your overall market value. Now, as I briefly mentioned earlier, your salary doesn't always it does not equal what your value is, because you may have a role, but you do so much more for an organization than what falls on that job description that you have. And what you have to understand is that your salary is basically the position value to the employer, and ultimately it's how the employer values the position. Now, you being in that position doing extra work may require, or um, may lead to con, may lead to conversations around more money. But just from a high level, the employer values a position at a certain rate, and they may set aside a certain amount of money within their budget for a certain position. So keep that in mind as you think about your salary negotiations. Now, market research, I talked about it, but the question is, how do you really go about it? What does it look like? I may understand that different jobs in different states may pay a different amount, but what I have on this slide are actually a few resources that will allow you to compare a job in, say, Los Angeles versus a job in Kentucky. And when you utilize these resources and you go to their webpage, you can see what a cost of living adjustment should look like, or a cost of living analysis should look like. Now, Here's an example. So here's a job that's located in Louisville, Kentucky for Coca-Cola, and the position is a maintenance tech, salary 52,000. And on the right side, I have a few resources that can help you with um, understanding what a cost of living adjustment may look like. So if I want to know how much a job is paying in a typical, well, in a specific location, I can look at bankrate.com. Well, not Bankrate. I can look at glassdoor.com and do somewhat of a comparison, look and see what a maintenance tech in Louisville, Kentucky, working for Coca-Cola may make. From there, with the resources on the right, I can look at salary, the adjusted salary for the cost of living. And what that will ultimately tell you is whether or not that position is the same or it or if it's a different amount in a different place. So visiting bankrate.com, I can take this position at 52,000 and I can adjust it for the cost of living when looking at, say, Plano, Texas. So in this example, I've taken that a market analyst job with Coca-Cola. Salary is 65,000. But if I look at that same position and I adjust for cost of living when comparing Louisville, Kentucky to Plano, Texas, I see that there's about a 17.9% higher cost of living in Plano, Texas. So what that means is that my salary of 65,000, in order to maintain that same standard of living at 65,000, I would need to make $76,681. So this is a cost of living comparison calculator that is found on www.bankrate.com, where you can go and do a cost of living analysis or comparison. But first, you use a resource like Glassdoor to figure out what a salary is. And if you're comparing apples to apples, you want to be sure to adjust a salary for the cost of living. So just one way to do it, and it's definitely an effective tool. All right, so something else that you need to consider when it comes to trying to figure out how much a job should typically pay or what kind of the market is. One thing you can do is you can talk to other colleagues. Now, I know most employers strongly encourage you not to discuss salaries at your job, and they do that because they don't want anyone to file any complaints or anything like that or get upset and their work quality and work production decrease as a result of them learning that the neighbor or someone who works alongside them is making a lot more money than someone else, and they do that to avoid any issues. So that's one way that you can look at that. But the big thing I want to get across here is that sometimes you can have those discussions with individuals, and I say with trusted individuals or someone outside of your employer, someone that you may not be as connected to or you may not know. And one way to do that is by utilizing your resources like LinkedIn. Now, what would that look like? If you log into LinkedIn and you say, hey, how much money do you make? You probably wouldn't get a good answer. But if you rephrase that and you reach out to someone who's either in a role in the industry that you're looking at, and you say, hey, I'm currently in the process of looking for a job within the same field as you. I'm currently trying to figure out what a good salary range for an entry level position in this role would look like. If you ask that question, I promise you, you're much more likely to get a response, and maybe even a response that you can actually use. So it's all about how you frame it and how that person that you're talking to perceives it. So some individuals just won't respond, but some who are interested and willing to help others may be more likely to answer. So if someone sends me a message on LinkedIn, I don't mind telling them. I'll tell them whatever, as far as salary. Now, salary is something that individuals they just don't like to discuss. Um, and, the thing about money is individuals feel as though someone will judge them based off of how much money they make or something like that. But that's one thing that we need to get away from, because we can help individuals. And it's not like I can mess with your salary or something by you telling me how much you make. So what it can do is it can help some individuals in different situations. But growing up, it was probably something that was kept pretty private. Wasn't talked about a lot, but again, as we learn more, we teach, we grow, and we share so that others can benefit. So um, the example that I use with LinkedIn, you can reach out, you can ask someone about a range and maybe get some results that way. All right. So when you ask for more than what the market dictates, this is also another situation. So you have a job, you're working, you're doing great at your job, you're probably getting paid or compensated for what the great work that you're doing. But then all of a sudden your boss comes and they say, hey, how about you take on this project or you take on this additional work? And they do that multiple times. And then all of a sudden you're doing much more than what you were initially asked to when you signed up for the role. And this is a situation where you may go to your employer and say, hey, I feel as though the work that I'm doing should could potentially pay more money. And you have that conversation with an employer or your supervisor. And the question is, how do you go about that? So asking for more than the market dictates or what the market says that you may make in the role, especially when you're doing more. Here are the things that I would highly or strongly recommend that you do. One is list out what the job description is, what you signed up to do, and what the responsibilities are. Also, you can list out the minimum qualifications. What does this job require in order for someone to be in this role? Also, the preferred qualifications. That is, well, even though these are the qualifications that the employer is looking for, these are the things that would help kind of make a case for someone being better suited for a position. And then also list out where you're seeing what you're seeing as far as the market when you do your market research. And then ultimately, you ask yourself a question: am I doing more than what this position was initially posted as? If so, then you can start making a case for receiving more information. I mean, more money, even if the market is, the market for that specific role and the responsibilities may be a little different. So, what skills do you have? That's a way that, yeah, well, that's the question you have to answer when you're trying to make a case for more money, and especially if it's more than what the market typically dictates for that role. And something that you can keep as you move along and as you work and you build your resume is what is called a brag book. And a brag book is basically a running list of accomplishments that you have attained over time that make you or help you to be more than just an average employee. And you list those out. If you achieve some record sales number or something like that, you list that out on your in your notes. You save that, you list it out in your brag book, and then the next time you go for an interview or you apply for a job, you have that accomplishment there and available. So you have to keep track of these. It does involve a level of dedication to making sure that you're tracking what you're doing and seeing how it can help tell your story of how you're a better employee or a more valuable employee to an employer. Now, the second thing is, any educational achievements. Have you gotten an additional degree? And maybe you've earned your master's degree, but this job only requires a bachelor's degree. That could be something that you add to your case. The next thing there is different certifications that you may have obtained. Now, certifications are really popular, especially in the tech industry. And a lot of times with the right certification, you may not even be required to have a degree, but it may require certifications to show that you've obtained the knowledge in order to complete a certain job. So if you have obtained certifications, you can add that to your list of accomplishments. Sales numbers, I mentioned this one earlier. If your average sales have been higher than the market average, then that would dictate or that would lead to hopefully you having the necessary accomplishments that would hopefully allow you to obtain a higher salary. So that's also something to look at. Next thing I have there is different experiences you have had, either on the job, outside the job, volunteer experiences. All of that can be uh, factored into your case that you make for a higher salary. And then also, last but not least, any additional leadership opportunities you have taken on. any projects that you have worked on where you have shown leadership, all of that can go into your case for making more money. So what skills, what does the job require? What skills do you have? And what have you displayed over time? All of these things can go in your brag book or your running list of accomplishments. All right. As I mentioned with that brag book, different achievements, this is basically summarizing the previous slide where we have those sales numbers, the continuing education that you've done, those work accolades, personality traits, praise from other clients and partners. These are also things that can go in the brag book. Any cost saving ideas or improvements you've done for the company. What have you done to make either your boss's job easier or other colleagues or individuals you work with their job easier? What have you done? That's ultimately what can help with making the case for making more money. And if you list these out in a brag book and you continuously maintain or you keep up as your job description and or as your work changes, these are all things that can be in your favor. All right, the next thing I have here is confidence. So this is something that, as I mentioned, having a conversation with an employer about a salary can be it can be an overwhelming process for some. It can be uncomfortable, it can be odd, and it can also put individuals in a defensive state of being. So what I really want you all to do is you think about this is to kind of work on your confidence and know that if you're asking for more money, that it's something you deserve and that you've worked hard for. And the way that you build that confidence is by tracking some of those accomplishments or some of those achievements. Um, and you do that by keeping track of those things in that brag book. And then you also you think about as you build your confidence level, think about the impact that your posture will show if your confidence level is high. If you're confident, you're going to an employer and you're saying, "Hey, I feel as though I deserve more money. I have the reasoning and the accomplishments, achievements, this brag book, along with everything else that I've done to kind of help make my case," then you're more likely to be in a position where your employer is going to listen. And I say this process starts way before the offer is extended or before that negotiation. So with your brag book, you build, you continuously add, and then you review. And those are the three things that are important as you build up to making a case. Now, here are a few tips on what to avoid when it comes to a salary negotiation or even an offer from an employer. One, excuse me, one thing is you try to avoid a range because employers will oftentimes have a range for a position. It may be, I don't know, 60 to 80,000, and what they'll do or what they'll pay may fall within that range. This is how much they have set aside within their budget that they would pay for a specific role. But if they ask you what your range is or ask you how much you'd be willing to accept, they're going to say, well, you may say 65,000. Well, they may have been willing to pay up to 80,000 and you may not have known that. Or you may say 60 to 70,000. And more likely when you provide that range, they see that you are willing to accept the lower end of that range. So be sure to put forth the number that you're seeking. And if they ask, then you're on the spot and you need to provide a number, then do so, but try to avoid it. And one way to avoid that is you can say that, hey, I'm open to discussing salary once we progress through the interview process. You can also say I'm open to discussing this as I learn more about the company and how my skills bring value to the organization. However, I will consider any reasonable offer. And what that does is it kind of shifts the decision back to them, puts the ball back in their court. So the reason that you try to avoid providing a range, you can price yourself out of a position. It may be a position that you really want. You want as much money as possible in that role. You may say that you're seeking 85,000, but their range stops at 80. So, um, and what you do in that situation is you don't give them the opportunity to learn how great of an employee you could potentially be. So that's why you try to avoid the ranges. You try to avoid pricing yourself out of a position, but sometimes they may put you on the spot and feel as though you have to answer. And there's just a few tips on how to do that. Now you could decrease the offer. They may think that they may think that they need to offer at a higher range. Once you provide a range that's lower, that gives them kind of the green light to offer less. And um, don't hesitate. This is why you do the research to figure out how much a position, or how valuable, or what the market basically says a position is worth. Also, a range will give them permission to offer the lower end. And then last but not least, your stock is the highest at the point at which they realize that they want you to be a part of their team. Up until that point, you're trying to make the case. But once an employer realizes, like, hey, this is the person that I want, they are much more likely to offer you a higher amount of money, and for you to earn more money. So that's the place, and that's the way you have to look at the salary negotiation process, or the job hunt, and the process of obtaining a job that you're really interested in. Once they decide they want you, they're more likely to pay. And a lot of times when they extend a range, there's usually, or there can be, a worst case or best case scenario where an employee is just phenomenal. They may have a little extra money that they can put forth as far as an offer. So all things to consider. Now, this is the part where you've done all the research, you know what your market value is, you've created that brag book that lists all of your achievements, all of your accomplishments, you have all of your goals, you have everything written down, and you've kind of built your confidence over time. And you're at a point where an offer is about to be made, and you're ready. So what do? So you receive an offer, and you've tried to avoid providing an expected salary, but you get an offer, you look at it, you determine if it's reasonable or not. You say it's not reasonable. So maybe you decide that you should probably ask for more money, and then you have to answer the question why. And then if yes, of course, yes is your answer, then now I'm going to provide just a few tips on how to move the conversation forward from the point at which you've done all your research. You know that you're worth more money. You know that what you bring to the table is valued at a certain point, and this is how you move forward. So you begin the process of preparing a counter offer. Now, with the counter offer, you write down the numbers that you wish, that you want, and the number that says, hey, this isn't right, I'm walking away. And those are numbers that we suggest that you write down. And what you must do is you must show that the current offer is below market value, or with you in that role, that position would be more valuable to the company. So even though they may have their range, what you're trying to do is provide enough insight or enough information to the employer so that they view you in that role as being much more valuable, meaning you have a more diverse skill set, or you have leadership that you bring into the role. So these are all things to consider. And what you must do is you must justify the ask. So as you prepare your counter offer, you say, well, this is the number I wish, this is the number I want, this is where, there's no more discussion. I'm just walking away. And then you prepare, or you begin to write down what that market value is for that position. And then with your skills, your brag book, and all that info, you justify how you ask for more money. Now, my preference for this is to do it through email. Some experts say do it over the phone. Now, what I always say is that some individuals, because it is an awkward situation, they may not feel as confident over the phone, or they may get tripped up on their words, or the fear of the employer saying no may build up, and it could lead to maybe the conversation not going the way that you want it to go. But if you do it through email, you're able to communicate, and you're able to ask for how much money it is that you feel as though you're worth, and hopefully it'll lead to a better result. But here are a few tips on what to put into the email, or the ask if you're going to do it over the phone. A couple of things to think about as you prepare the correspondence. A couple of things that you never do. You never say that, I need this raise because my rent is going up. You never say that I need this raise because of my financial situation. It can't be about your financial situation. because more often than not, employers make decisions off of the company or the employer and what their needs are. It can't be about you and what you need. Now, in some situations, you may work with a fantastic employer where they value what the employee's needs are and kind of what you're going through in your family situation. But more often than not, it's about what the employer needs. So keep that in mind. So as you prepare correspondence, the first thing you want to do is show gratitude for the offer and also show a level of excitement about the position, because you may say, oh no, I just need more money, but you haven't shown them that you're excited about the position. They want someone that's excited about the position, and also that you appreciate the fact that they want you to come and work for them. So those are things to think about, and that's usually how I start the correspondence back to an employer if I'm negotiating a salary. The second thing there is share your market analysis, meaning based upon my research, this is about where the market is for this position, and you communicate that within the offer. And what you can do is you can list out a table, or you can list out just different employers, or maybe the same employer at a different location that's been adjusted for the cost of living, and you just basically shown that you've done your research. Number three, you ask for and then you justify your salary expectations. So thank you for this opportunity. I'm excited about the position. Based upon my market analysis, this is what a person in a similar role uh, should be making. And based upon my experiences, my accomplishments, my achievements, what I've contributed, what I've done at various companies or various in various roles, this is my reasoning for asking for X salary or more money. And then last but not least, just your closing. This is where you say, once again, I appreciate the offer, and I hope I look forward to working with you in the future or something along those lines. But you have to close that correspondence with kind of putting the ball back in their court. And let me give you an example. So this is actually an example of an offer, I say a correspondence that I sent back a while back when I first decided to leave corporate and go into higher education. And I was offered a position at the University of Tulsa, and I said, basically done a market analysis, compared jobs that were similar in different roles, and basically made the case for how my skills aligned and why I deserve more money. And I've sent this to so many different people. So if you see this circulating around, I mean, I don't care. Again, I don't mind sharing. But this was something that I used, and I was able to get, the amount that I'd asked for, where basically showed gratitude for the offer, showed my market analysis. I talked about the role that I would have been going into, how my skills have aligned, and basically, they sum up to be more than what that position is asking for, and how I could utilize my skills to grow their program. And it worked. Now, it's not always going to work. Some employers are more open to listening, and you also have to consider what type of candidate pool they have. And what helps is anytime you can become an expert or really get really good or extremely talented in something, that always acts in your favor. And this is something that I use. I'm happy to share this with anyone. So if you would like a copy of this, just reach out to HJW. I'll send you a copy of this. And what I strongly encourage you to do is kind of make this your own. Of course, this was something that I wrote late at night, so maybe you would reposition things, but hopefully this gives you kind of the idea of how to prepare a correspondence for a salary negotiation. Now, other things to consider, um, everything doesn't always rely on salary. I always say that you need to look at the total compensation package and think about what's important to you. Some employers may offer better benefits, an increased bonus or commission. They may provide a budget for professional development where you can grow your skills and maybe even, use that as a springboard to another position. Some employers may allow you to work from home. They may provide more vacation days or an earlier vesting schedule, meaning if you have to be with an employer for so long before you're considered vested, meaning their contributions to your retirement account become the point at which the employer's contributions to your retirement account become 100% yours. That's basically how vesting works. But if you've been with an employer for a while, you change employers, all of a sudden, if their vesting schedule is a couple of years later, then you're missing out on those retirement account contributions, which means that you're getting paid less essentially when you look at the total compensation. So there may be an opportunity to negotiate that. And it's usually more flexibility with private employers, private companies um, than say others, but doesn't hurt to ask. Also, different healthcare incentives. You have meals, you have transportation, relocation, you have travel, you have 401k matching, you have gym membership. All of these are different things you can ask for in a situation where your compensation may not be what you want it to be, but there are other ways to make up for that. So the total compensation kind of offsets any decrease in salary or something like that. You can also ask an employer for more money if you feel as though you feel as though the benefits at a new job aren't as great. So all things to consider. Now, I've talked a lot. I've talked a lot about salary negotiations, and what I want to do is provide you with a couple of resources. So there's a LinkedIn Learning series, or there are LinkedIn Learning videos that talk about salary negotiations that can help as you think about how to negotiate a salary. A lot of the info that I got was from a salary negotiation training that was conducted on LinkedIn. And I've also combined a lot of that info with some of the things that I've learned along the way. So that's the info that you've got. And also, anytime that I'm providing financial education, I always like to provide resources. One podcast that I listen to is Earn Your Leisure. It's a great podcast that talks about different money situations. They don't go as much into salary negotiation, but as we look at just finances in general, a lot of these things are interconnected, and one thing can affect another. So to have a holistic or overall financial um, well-being, then you need to understand multiple areas. So that's why I add this resource in. I always like to end with a quote: "Discipline turns ability into achievement." And being disciplined, writing down that info that goes into your brag book, that will help you prepare for a salary negotiation, and it will help you go into that conversation with more confidence. So again, thank you all. I want to thank you all for attending the seminar, or at least watching our video. We have lots of great info and lots of great education for you all. So check us out at hjwfinancial.org and be on the lookout for our next financial education seminar. Thank you all. And let me see if there are any more questions or anything, which I don't think so. All right, so we're good. So again, thank you all. Please tune in to our next presentation, and y'all take care.